The bell above the diner door gave its usual tired jingle as Clara Miller set down a plate of apple pie and wiped her hands on her apron. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight, the kind of hour when even the city's noise seemed to hush. Outside, the wind bit through the cracked window frames, carrying with it the scent of rain and something colder loneliness. That was when she saw him again, huddled under the street lamp in his torn grey coat, the same way he always sat, waiting, but never asking. Clara grabbed a bowl of hot soup from the kitchen and poured in the last spoonful of rice she'd been saving for herself. "You'll get sick if you stay out there," she called softly as she stepped outside, her breath fogging in the air. The man looked up, his blue eyes dulled by age and something deeper. "Evening, Miss Clara," he rasped, his voice warm but brittle, like an old violin string. "You shouldn't be wasting food on me." "It's not wasting," she replied, kneeling to place the bowl in his trembling hands. "You eat this, and I won't have to call the paramedics again." That made him chuckle, a faint, wheezing sound that still carried gratitude. She had met him almost a year ago, a shadow on the curb who never begged, never complained. He told her his name was Sam. Nobody knew where he came from, and nobody cared. But Clara did. She saw something behind his quiet eyes, something that reminded her of her late father, Pride, hidden behind ruin. Inside, the diner buzzed with flickering neon lights and the low hum of an old jukebox. Customers were rare this time of night, and her co-workers had long gone home. For Clara, these were the hours she didn't mind being alone. It was peaceful in its own sad way. Her own life wasn't much better. Rent was late again. Her 7-year-old son, Leo, had another doctor's appointment in the morning, and his asthma medication cost more than she made in 2 shifts. She was 29, a single mother, and tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Still, feeding Sam made her feel human in a world that had forgotten kindness. Every night, he waited outside the diner, and every night she brought him something, a sandwich, a coffee, a piece of pie. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat quietly under the flickering streetlight. Sam always thanked her, always promised he'd repay her one day. She always laughed and said, "You can pay me back by staying warm." One rainy night, she gave him her late husband's old scarf. "You'll need it more than I do," she said. Sam looked at it for a long time before wrapping it around his neck. "You're a rare soul, Clara," he whispered. Not many people give without expecting. She didn't think much of it. To her, kindness was survival. She couldn't fix her own life, but maybe she could make someone else's night a little easier. That same night, after cleaning up, Clara stepped outside to lock up the diner. The rain had stopped. The bench where Sam usually sat was empty, except for the empty bowl. She sighed. Maybe he'd found shelter. Maybe he'd finally moved on. But the next evening, when she looked out the window, he was back sitting straighter than usual, eyes brighter, almost expectant. She smiled, ready to bring him his usual soup. Before she could step outside, Sam asked quietly, "Clara, if one day I don't come back, will you still remember me?" She froze at the doorway, not sure what to say. His tone was calm, almost resigned. "Of course I will," she said finally. "You're my friend." Sam smiled, a slow, sore smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The next night, the bench was empty again, and this time it stayed that way. The next 3 nights dragged by like ghosts. The diner felt emptier without Sam sitting outside, waiting under the streetlight with his patient smile. Clara still brought out an extra bowl of soup each evening, setting it on the bench just in case. Each morning, she'd find it cold and untouched, the rain pooling inside it like tears. The regulars noticed too. "Where's your friend tonight, Clara?" asked old Mrs. Dobbins, her usual cup of decaf trembling in her hands. Clara just smiled weakly. Probably found a warmer spot, that's all. But the hollow in her chest said otherwise. By the 4th night, worry became something heavier. Fear. She clocked out early and walked down the streets Sam used to wander. Chicago at midnight wasn't kind trash cans overturned, alleys echoing with sirens, the smell of wet concrete mixing with cheap liquor. She stopped near the bridge by the train tracks, where some of the homeless gathered around a barrel fire. The orange light flickered across their faces, carving shadows that looked older than their years. "Excuse me," Clara said softly, clutching her coat tighter. "Have any of you seen a man named Sam? Grey coat, kind eyes. Maybe in his 60s? They looked at her with cautious suspicion. Then one man thin, with a beard that could have been snow spoke. "You mean old Sam Reed?" "Yeah, I seen him around. Used to talk about his company, some fancy tech thing. People thought he was crazy." Her heart skipped. "He had a company?" The man laughed bitterly. "That's what he said. Said they took everything from him. That's why he sleeps out here now." Clara stood frozen, the fire crackling between them. She remembered the way Sam sometimes stared at the city skyline, lost in thought, as if looking at a memory instead of buildings. Maybe he hadn't been delusional after all. When she got home, Leo was already asleep on the couch, his small chest rising and falling under the soft hum of the heater. She brushed his hair back and whispered, "Everything's okay, baby." But her own voice shook. She sat at the table, staring at the unopened bills and the cold cup of coffee in front of her. She missed Sam's stories, his calmness, the way he reminded her that even broken people could still give warmth. The next morning, rain poured down in sheets. Clara trudged through her shift, her mind miles away. Around 10 p.m., she was wiping down the counter when headlights flared through the window. The sound that followed wasn't the usual hum of old sedans, it was a deep, smooth growl. A Rolls-Royce Phantom. It stopped right outside the diner. Everyone inside turned to look. The car gleamed even in the rain, black as midnight, its chrome grille shining like a mirror. The door opened slowly, and a man in a perfectly pressed suit stepped out, holding a sleek umbrella. His shoes didn't even splash. The kind of man who didn't belong anywhere near the diner's flickering neon sign. Clara's breath caught. She'd seen expensive cars before, but never one like this. Not here, not at her corner of the city. The man stepped inside, glancing around until his eyes landed on her. "Are you Clara Miller?" His voice was deep, controlled, like someone used to being obeyed. "Yes," she said, confused. He reached into his coat and produced a white envelope, edges sealed with a gold wax stamp. "Mr. Samuel Reed asked me to deliver this to you personally." Clara's hands trembled as she took it. "Samuel Reed?" The man nodded once. "Mr. Reed spoke highly of you, Miss Miller. He said you'd understand." Before she could respond, the man tipped his hat, stepped back into the rain, and disappeared into the waiting car. Through the diner window, Clara watched the Rolls-Royce glide away, its taillights vanishing into the mist. She looked down at the envelope in her shaking hands. Written across it, in steady handwriting, were the words, "For Clara, thank you for seeing me." Inside, something shifted, a truth waiting to rewrite everything she thought she knew about Sam. For a long moment, Clara just stood there behind the counter, staring at the envelope as if it might vanish if she blinked. The gold wax seal glimmered faintly under the diner's flickering neon sign, its elegant swirl of initials, SR, pressed deep into the surface. Her name was written in calm, deliberate handwriting. For Clara. Her throat tightened. Only Sam ever called her that with such softness. Her co-worker, Benny, leaned over the counter, drying his hands on a towel. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." She managed a weak laugh. "Maybe I have." She slipped the envelope into her apron pocket, pretending not to care, but the weight of it followed her everywhere. Through the rest of her shift, she poured coffee, took orders, smiled at customers, but her mind was already miles away. When the diner finally emptied near 2 a.m., she sat alone in her usual booth. The rain outside had softened to a mist, the kind that blurred the streetlights into watery halos. Slowly, she broke the seal. Inside was a single folded letter and a check. Her heart pounded as she unfolded it. The check was made out to her $20,000. The signature was clear and unmistakable. Samuel Reed. Her vision blurred. It couldn't be real. She had seen Sam wearing the same torn coat every night, his shoes patched with duct tape. $20,000? For her? She turned the paper over, half expecting to find a joke scribbled on the back. But it was clean. Real. Then she unfolded the letter. Dear Clara, if you're reading this, it means I've finally kept my promise. I told you I'd repay your kindness one day, though I doubt you ever expected this. You fed me when I was invisible. You spoke to me when others turned away. That kind of heart deserves more than just gratitude. Please come to 11 Lakeside Avenue tomorrow evening at 7. There's something I want you to have. Trust the driver who brings you. He knows the way. S.R. Her eyes stung with tears. The words were calm, almost formal, but she could feel Sam in them, the quiet dignity, the gentleness that always hid behind his rough edges. What did you do, Sam? She whispered. Back home, Leo was asleep again, his small hand clutching his inhaler. Clara sat beside him, staring at the letter under the yellow lamplight. It didn't make sense. Maybe Sam had some old savings. Maybe he'd found help. But $20,000 was more money than she'd seen in her entire life. Morning came too quickly. She went through the motions, coffee, breakfast, packing Leo's lunch, but her thoughts stayed stuck on that gold seal. By afternoon, she'd made up her mind. Curiosity outweighed fear. She would go. At exactly 7 the next evening, the same black Rolls-Royce appeared outside her apartment building. The same driver stepped out, his hat low, his tone respectful. Miss Miller, if you'll come with me. She hesitated only a second before nodding. The car smelled of leather and cedar. Through the tinted windows, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold as they drove north, away from everything she knew. The hum of the engine was so smooth, it felt unreal, like gliding through another world. After half an hour, the car slowed, turning down a long, tree-lined driveway that led to a massive iron gate. Beyond it stood a mansion of glass and stone, illuminated against the night sky like something out of a dream. The driver parked beside a fountain shaped like an angel. We've arrived, Miss Miller. Clara stepped out, the cold air stealing her breath. The mansion loomed above her, every window glowing warm. She could see silhouettes moving inside stuff, perhaps. Her hands shook as she clutched the letter. Who are you, Sam? She whispered. And what did I walk into? At the top of the marble steps, the front doors opened slowly and someone inside said, We've been expecting you, Miss Miller. Clara hesitated at the base of the grand staircase, her shoes dripping rain onto the marble floor. The doors had opened on their own, revealing a world so far removed from hers it didn't feel real. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and lilies. A chandelier shimmered overhead, scattering light like falling stars. Every surface gleamed too perfect, too untouchable. A tall man in a black suit approached, his expression calm but unreadable. Miss Miller, he said with a slight bow. Welcome to Lakeside Manor. My name is Charles. Mr. Reed requested that I receive you personally. Mr. Reed, she repeated, the name catching in her throat. You mean Sam? He paused for a beat, something soft flickering in his eyes. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Samuel Reed. Charles gestured for her to follow. Her footsteps echoed across the marble as they walked through a long corridor lined with paintings, portraits of men and women in tailored suits, their faces confident and familiar, as if they belonged on magazine covers. At the end of the hallway hung a single painting unlike the rest. It showed a man in a tuxedo, smiling beneath a golden light. His eyes were unmistakable. Sam. Clara stopped. That's him. Charles turned slightly. Yes, That was taken 15 years ago at a charity gala. Before the unfortunate events. Unfortunate events? She asked. He nodded solemnly. Mr. Reed built Reed Technologies from the ground up. 5 years ago, a betrayal inside his company left him stripped of everything. He disappeared soon after. Everyone assumed he had died. Only a few of us knew the truth, that he chose to live quietly until he found peace. Clara's heart thudded. Sam's stories about loss and starting over weren't metaphors. They were memories. But he was living on the streets, she whispered. Not living, Charles corrected gently. Surviving. He wanted to understand what it meant to lose everything. Perhaps he was searching for something money couldn't buy. They reached a set of double doors. Charles opened them slowly, revealing a study filled with books and warm lamplight. The fire in the hearth crackled softly. Please, have a seat, Miss Miller. Clara sat on the edge of a leather chair, her palms damp against her jeans. The desk before her was covered in papers, photos, and an old silver pocket watch. Beside it rested a folder stamped confidential. Her gaze caught on a handwritten note resting on top. For Clara to be opened only after my passing. His passing, she murmured. Charlotte's expression darkened. Mr. Reed passed away last night. The room tilted. What? I'm sorry. He had been ill for quite some time. You were the last person he spoke of. Clara gripped the arms of the chair, trying to steady herself. He never said, he never even hinted. He didn't want pity, Charles said quietly. He said you treated him like a man, not a ghost. That kindness gave him peace in his final months. Tears welled in her eyes. She thought of his smile, the way he'd always thanked her for soup, as if it were a feast. He didn't owe me anything, she whispered. Charles handed her the folder. Nevertheless, he left you something. His final instructions are inside. Clara opened it with trembling fingers. The first page was a will. It listed properties, shares, and accounts numbers she couldn't even comprehend. Her name was written under the heading, Beneficiary. I don't understand, she said faintly. Why me? Charles folded his hands behind his back. Because you were the only one who saw him when he was invisible. A clock chimed somewhere in the distance. The sound echoed through the vast halls, deep and final. Charles nodded toward the letter. He also left a message. He wanted you to read it at dawn, in his garden by the lake. Clara swallowed hard, glancing at the sealed envelope marked in Sam's handwriting. Outside, thunder rolled softly across the lake, and she realized this was only the beginning of what Sam had planned. The dawn crept slowly over the lake, painting the water in pale gold. Mist drifted low along the surface like breath on glass. Clara wrapped Sam's old scarf around her neck as she stepped onto the stone path leading to the garden. The mansion behind her stood silent, its windows dark except for one faint light in the study. Charles had told her she could find the bench where Mr. Reed used to sit every morning to watch the sunrise. Her boots crunched on the gravel as she walked. The garden was vast and perfectly manicured, hedges trimmed into delicate spirals, roses heavy with dew. It was beautiful, but to Clara it felt lonely, like a museum of someone's lost dreams. The lake stretched endlessly, calm and endless, reflecting the first hints of daylight. She found the bench by a cluster of white lilies. On the seat lay a small wooden box, its lid carved with the same initials she'd seen on the wax seal. S.R. Her hands trembled as she lifted it open. Inside was another envelope, sealed in blue, and beneath it the silver pocket watch from his desk. The inscription on the back read, "Time means nothing when gratitude is forever." Clara sank onto the bench and broke the seal. My dear Clara, if you're reading this, then my journey has ended. But yours is about to begin. You showed me a kind of wealth that cannot be stolen, decency, compassion, and courage. In you, I saw the part of humanity I had forgotten when I lost everything. The men who betrayed me still control what I built. They destroyed lives, not just mine. But I never stopped believing someone honest could set it right again. That someone is you. You will find another envelope in Charles' care. Inside are documents, plans for a project I started years ago. A system to purify water cheaply for communities who have none. It was my dream, but greed buried it. I want you to bring it back. My lawyers will guide you, but the heart of this mission must be yours. If you choose to walk away, no one will blame you. But if you choose to fight, know this: the world will not make it easy for you. Those who stole from me will come for you too. Still, I believe in your courage. You fed a man with nothing and made him feel human again. That kind of strength cannot be bought. With all my gratitude, Samuel Reed. The letter blurred as tears filled her eyes. The words carried his voice, calm and kind, like he was sitting beside her again. She held the paper to her chest, the weight of his belief pressing down harder than the money he left behind. She looked out over the lake. The surface shimmered with morning light, and for a fleeting second, she imagined Sam there standing on the water's edge, smiling, free from the burden of his past. "You believed in me," she whispered. "I won't let you down." Footsteps sounded behind her. It was Charles, holding a leather folder. "Miss Miller," he said softly. "This contains the project files and the address of Mr. Reed's legal team. They are waiting for your decision." Clara wiped her face and took the folder. "He wanted me to finish what he started." "Yes," Charles replied. "He said you were the only one he trusted with it." She looked down at the silver pocket watch, the second hand ticking steadily. Somewhere inside, something shifted from grief to purpose. "He'll do it," she said quietly. Charles nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. Then his faith was well placed. As Clara stood, the rising sun broke through the mist, and somewhere in the reflection of the lake, she swore she saw Sam's gentle smile one last time. The following week unfolded like a dream Clara wasn't sure she belonged in. Every morning, she woke up expecting to find the check gone, the letter a lie, and the mansion nothing more than an illusion. But each time she looked at Sam's handwriting, it was all still real. Charles arranged for her to meet Samuel Reed's attorney, Mr. Whitaker, a man with silver hair and a voice so smooth it could have been carved from marble. They met in a downtown office so tall its windows seemed to pierce the clouds. He greeted her with a polite smile, but there was calculation in his eyes. "Miss Miller," he began, sliding a folder across the desk. "Mr. Reed's estate was substantial. However, there is a stipulation before full transfer of assets can be completed." Clara frowned. "A stipulation?" "Yes. In his final instructions, Mr. Reed requested that you revive a project, something called the Eden Initiative. It appears to have been his life's work before the company board dissolved it." She opened the folder. Blueprints, schematics, documents filled with numbers and technical jargon she could barely understand. At the top of each page, stamped in bold letters, was the same phrase: "Affordable Water Purification System." Whitaker adjusted his glasses. The project was meant to provide clean water to underprivileged communities. It was shut down after internal opposition. Mr. Reed believed it could change millions of lives. Unfortunately, his former executives did not share his vision. "And he wants me to finish it?" she asked, disbelief coloring her voice. "Exactly. If the project is successfully relaunched within 30 days, you inherit full control of Reed Technologies, including his majority shares. If not, all assets revert to the current board." 30 days? Clara echoed. "That's impossible. I don't even know how to read half of this." Whitaker folded his hands. "Those are his terms. You can walk away, of course. The trust fund will still grant you enough to live comfortably. But if you truly wish to honor his legacy, this is the path." Clara leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. She had no business being here a waitress with no degree, no experience, no clue how billion-dollar corporations worked. Yet Sam believed she could do it. And that belief burned brighter than fear. She met Whitaker's gaze. Then he'll try. For a moment, the lawyer's mask slipped. Something like surprise flickered across his face. Very well. The board will be informed. By the next morning, every major business outlet carried the same headline. Waitress named temporary head of Reed Technologies. The internet erupted with mockery. People called her the charity case CEO, the soup girl, the pity promotion. Reporters camped outside her building. The pressure was suffocating. Charles stayed by her side, calm and steady. They'll doubt you until you prove them wrong, he said. Just like they doubted him. At Reed Technologies, the atmosphere was colder than glass. Suits whispered as she walked past. She could feel their stares cutting through her. One voice finally spoke loud enough for her to hear. Guess feeding a bum pays off after all. Clara stopped, but didn't turn around. He wasn't a bum, she said quietly. He was the only honest man in this building. The silence that followed was heavier than applause. Later that day, she stood in the boardroom where Sam once ruled. At the far end of the long table sat Veronica Hale, the company's acting CEOA woman with sharp features and eyes that gleamed like knives. "Welcome to Reed Technologies, Miss Miller," Veronica said smoothly. "I hope you enjoy your brief visit. You'll find this world isn't as simple as handing out soup." Clara met her stare, her pulse steady. "Good thing I'm not afraid of getting my hands dirty." A faint smirk crossed Veronica's lips, but her eyes stayed cold. Outside the glass walls, storm clouds gathered over the skyline, and Clara knew the real fight for Sam's legacy had just begun. From the moment Clara stepped into the glass tower that bore Sam's name, she felt like a trespasser in someone else's kingdom. Reed Technologies stretched 40 stories above Chicago, all glass, steel, and arrogance. The lobby gleamed like a cathedral to money-polished marble floors, gold nameplates, and the faint hum of power. Employees in tailored suits moved with robotic precision, their expressions a mix of curiosity and contempt as they recognized her face from the news. She could hear the whispers. "That's her." "The Waitress, Sam Reed's little charity project. She won't last a week." Charles walked beside her, calm as always. "Ignore them, Miss Miller. Their loyalty was bought, not earned." But ignoring was easier said than done. Every sneer, every sideways glance dug under her skin. She wasn't built for this world of boardrooms and stock prices. Her entire life had been about survival, not strategy. Yet Sam had believed she could carry his dream forward. That thought kept her moving. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, the executive suite. The air was colder here, the walls lined with framed awards and photos of Sam shaking hands with world leaders. But his presence was gone. The warmth he carried, even in silence, had been scrubbed away. At the head of the long conference table sat Veronica Hale. She didn't bother standing. Her dark red lipstick matched the polished nails tapping against her tablet. Around her were 6 other board membersmen in $1,000 suits and identical smirks. "Miss Miller," Veronica began, her tone sweet as poison. "We were just discussing how unconventional Mr. Reed's decision was. You must understand, this company operates on structure, not sentiment." Clara took a breath. "I understand. I'm not here for sentiment. I'm here to finish what Sam started." That earned a ripple of quiet laughter. Veronica tilted her head. "You mean the Eden Initiative? The board voted to terminate it 5 years ago. It's not financially viable. It's a dead project." "Maybe," Clara said evenly. "But it's what he wanted, and I intend to honor that." One of the men leaned forward. "Do you even know what that project is, Miss Miller? It's not some soup kitchen. It's a multi-million-dollar system involving complex hydrodynamics and biofiltration patents. You think a diner waitress can manage that?" The words stung, but she didn't flinch. "No," she said softly. "But I think a company that was built on one man's vision can remember what that vision stood for." The silence that followed was sharp. Veronica finally smiled, slow and cruel. "Very inspiring. But you'll find ideals don't pay shareholders. Still, if you want to play leader, I won't stop you. Just remember, you have 30 days. Fail, and everything Mr. Reed left you reverts to this board, including that pretty mansion you're staying in." Clara's pulse raced, but her face remained calm. "Then I guess I'd better get to work." As she turned to leave, she caught Veronica's reflection in the glass wall. Cold satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. The trap was set, and Clara had just walked straight into it. In the days that followed, the resistance was relentless. Calls went unanswered, emails disappeared. Departments suddenly misplaced files she needed. When she requested the technical team for Eden, she found an empty lab. "They reassigned everyone," Charles reported. Veronica saw to it personally. Clara stood in the middle of the deserted workspace, sunlight glinting off the dust-covered computers. "They want me to quit," she murmured. "Yes," Charles said, "because if you don't, you'll win." That night, she stayed alone in the lab until the city lights flickered on outside. She reread Sam's letter, the line that had anchored her since the first moment she saw it. "You fed a man with nothing, and made him believe in humanity again." Her hands tightened around the paper. "You believed in me, Sam," she whispered. "So ill believe in myself." Behind her, the glass door creaked open, and a voice she didn't recognize said, "If you're serious about fighting them, I know where to start." Clara spun around, startled. Standing in the doorway was a young man in his early 30s, tall, slightly unshaven, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked nothing like the pristine executives upstairs. His ID badge read, "Noah Carter, Systems Engineer." He held a folder under one arm, his expression cautious but determined. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said quickly. I used to work with Mr. Reed. Before everything went wrong." Clara studied him for a moment. His voice carried sincerity, but trust was something she'd learned to ration carefully. "What do you mean, before everything went wrong?" Noah stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The Eden Initiative wasn't shut down because it failed. It was sabotaged from the inside. Mr. Reed knew it, but he couldn't prove it. When he tried, they forced him out." She frowned. "You're talking about Veronica Hale, aren't you?" He gave a humorless smile. "And her partners on the board. They saw Eden as a threat to their profits. It would have made clean water practically free. That doesn't make investors happy." The weight of his words hit hard. Clara remembered Sam's letter, how he'd written that greed had buried his dream. Now it wasn't just a poetic phrase, it was literal. Noah placed the folder on the table. "I kept copies of his research, blueprints, test results, everything they tried to erase. I thought it was over until I saw your name on the news." She opened the folder, her heart pounding. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, sketches in Sam's familiar script, and a flash drive taped to the corner. At the top of one page was a single line. "Truth will always resurface, even underwater." He wanted to rebuild this, Noah said quietly, but he needed someone the board couldn't control. Clara exhaled slowly. "Someone invisible. Someone like me." He nodded. "Exactly. But if you start this again, they'll come after you just like they came after him." "I already figured that part out," she said, closing the folder. "But I can't stop now." Over the next week, they worked in secret. Every night after the building emptied, Clara and Noah pieced together Sam's design. The Eden Initiative wasn't just an invention, it was a revolution. A portable purification system, small enough to fit in a backpack, powerful enough to turn polluted water drinkable in minutes. It could save lives in places where hope was a luxury. As they worked, Clara caught glimpses of the man Noah had once been a loyal engineer who had believed in Sam's vision with the devotion of a son. They laughed sometimes, shared stories about Sam, but mostly they worked in silence, driven by the same invisible fire. Then one night, Noah's computer flashed red. Access denied. The files vanished before their eyes. "What happened?" Clara demanded. Noah's jaw tightened. "Someone just breached our system. They're watching us." Within minutes, the lab lights flickered. Down the hall, the echo of footsteps approached, measured, confident, unmistakable. Veronica Hale stepped into the room, flanked by 2 security officers. She looked at the open files on the desk, then at Clara. "So it's true," Veronica said coolly. "The waitress thinks she's a scientist now." Clara stood her ground. "You destroyed his work." "I protected this company," Veronica corrected. "Samuel Reed was sentimental. You, on the other hand, you're just naive." Noah took a step forward. "We have proof, Veronica. Sam documented everything." She smiled thinly. "Not anymore." She reached into her purse and dropped a USB drive onto the table, the same one that had held the Eden data. It was crushed in half. "Security found this earlier." "Shame about your little project." Clara's pulse pounded in her ears. "You can destroy files," she said quietly, "but you can't erase the truth." Veronica leaned closer, her perfume sharp and cold. "The truth is whatever I say it is. Walk away, Clara, before you end up like him." And with that, she turned and walked out, her heels clicking like gunshots. Clara looked down at the shattered drive, unaware that Sam had hidden one final backup in a place only she could find. That night, the city seemed louder than usual, sirens wailing, engines roaring, a storm brewing somewhere beyond the skyline. Clara couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Veronica's smirk, the broken flash drive, and Sam's handwriting burned into her memory. Truth will always resurface. She kept repeating those words, like a prayer against the fear creeping up her spine. Noah had gone underground, literally his apartment in a basement unit, hidden beneath a laundromat on the south side. "Too many eyes on us," he'd said. "They'll come after you next." He wasn't wrong. By morning, Clara noticed a black SUV parked across the street from her building. It wasn't subtle. 2 men sat inside, pretending to read newspapers that never turned a page. She tried to convince herself it was coincidence, but when she left for work, the car followed her for 6 blocks. At the diner where she used to work, her old manager Brenda caught her arm. "You look like hell," Brenda muttered. "You okay, kid?" Clara forced a smile. "Just tired." "Tired? Honey, you're shaking." Brenda lowered her voice. "You in trouble?" The kindness almost undid her. She wanted to tell someone, anyone, what was happening. But who would believe a waitress being hunted by billionaires? So she lied. "It's fine. I'm fine." By the time she returned to the mansion that night, the SUV was still there. Charles met her at the gate, his face grave. "Miss Miller, perhaps it's best you stay inside tonight." "Who are they?" He hesitated. "People who don't want you to finish what Mr. Reed started." She exhaled shakily. "They've already taken everything from him. What more do they want?" "Control," Charles said simply. "Always control." She nodded, her heart pounding. She wasn't ready to give them that satisfaction. Inside the study, she opened Sam's wooden box again. The silver pocket watch gleamed faintly in the dim light. She turned it over in her hands, tracing the inscription with her thumb. Then something clicked literally. The back of the watch shifted under pressure. She froze. Carefully, she pried it open. Inside, folded so small it was barely visible, was a thin strip of paper. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. Written in Sam's unmistakable scrawl were 6 words. "Backup, hidden where it all began." Her breath caught. "The diner," she whispered. She grabbed her coat and the watch, ignoring Charles' protests as she rushed toward the door. The night air was sharp and wet, the streets nearly empty. She drove herself back to the Sunrise Diner, her hands gripping the wheel until her knuckles turned white. The neon sign still flickered, the same way it had every night she'd fed Sam. The bench outside was wet from rain. She walked over, kneeling beside it, her mind racing. Sam had always sat in the same spot, his bag beside him, his feet tapping lightly on a loose tile near the curb. That's where she started digging. Under the cracked tile was a small metal tin wrapped in duct tape. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she pried it open. Inside was another flash drive, identical to the one Veronica had destroyed. Sam had hidden a second copy. Tears blurred her vision. "You old genius," she whispered. But the moment of relief didn't last. Headlights flared behind her. The black SUV had found her. She stuffed the drive into her jacket and ran toward the alley, splashing through puddles. A voice shouted her name, deep and threatening. She didn't look back. Her lungs burned as she rounded the corner and slammed straight into Noah. "Go," he shouted, grabbing her hand. "We're not safe here." They sprinted through the maze of back streets until the city swallowed them whole. Only when they reached the abandoned rail yard did they stop, gasping for air. Clara looked at the flash drive, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "He left us the truth," she said. Noah nodded grimly. "Then we'd better find a way to use it before they find us again." Behind them, in the dark, a camera lens blinked red. Someone was already watching. The abandoned rail yard was silent, except for the wind whistling through broken glass. Clara leaned against a rusted freight car, her chest rising and falling as she tried to catch her breath. Rainwater dripped from her hair onto the flash drive she still clutched in her hand. That tiny piece of metal now carried everything. Sam's dream. The proof of his betrayal. Maybe even her life. Noah crouched beside her, scanning the shadows. "We can't stay here long. If they tracked you to the diner, they'll find this place too." "I know," she said, voice shaking. "But we can't run forever. We need to get the data out before they destroy it again." He nodded. "There's an old server hub on the west side. My friend still manages it. If we can get there, we might recover the files safely." They moved quickly through the maze of freight containers, keeping low under the dim glow of streetlights. Clara's heart pounded in rhythm with her footsteps. Every sound, a car door slamming, a dog barking, made her flinch. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. By the time they reached the server hub, dawn had begun to break. The building looked abandoned from the outside, its windows boarded up, graffiti scrawled across the walls. Inside, the hum of machines filled the air. A man in his 40s with tired eyes greeted Noah with a firm handshake. "Didn't expect to see you again," he said. "Who's your friend?" "This is Clara Miller," Noah replied. "She's the one Reed trusted." The man's eyes widened slightly, then softened with understanding. "He talked about you. Said you reminded him of his daughter." Clara swallowed hard. "He had a daughter?" "Once," the man said quietly. "Before everything fell apart. They didn't ask more. There wasn't time." They connected the flash drive to an isolated terminal. Lines of code flooded the screen. For the first time in weeks, Clara felt hope flicker. "There," Noah said, typing rapidly. "I'm decrypting the master file." Suddenly the screen flashed red. Remote access detected. "No, no, no!" Noah cursed, slamming the keyboard. "They're in the system already. They must have planted a tracker." Clara's stomach dropped. "Can you stop it? I can try, but it'll expose our location." "Do it," she said, without hesitation. "They already know we're alive." He entered the final command. The lights flickered, and the hum of the servers rose to a steady roar. A single folder appeared on the desktop. Eden Final Blueprints.pdf. He yanked the drive free just as the power surged and the monitors went black. "Got it," he breathed. But their relief was short-lived. The distant wail of sirens echoed outside, growing louder. Clara turned toward the windows, two black SUVs pulling up fast. "Time to move," Noah shouted. They sprinted out the back, through a narrow alley lined with dumpsters. The first SUV screeched to a stop, and men in dark suits poured out. One shouted, "Stop! You're trespassing on corporate property!" Clara didn't look back. She ducked into another street, heart racing, lungs burning. Noah grabbed her arm and pulled her behind an old bakery, their backs pressed against the cold brick wall. "Now what?" she gasped. He looked at her, eyes fierce. "Now we fight back." "How?" "They own everything." "Not the truth," he said. "Not yet." They made their way to Charles' townhouse before sunrise. The butler opened the door instantly, his usually calm face drawn with worry. "Miss Miller, thank heavens." "I heard about the security breach." Clara placed the flash drive in his hand. "We have proof. Everything Sam built, everything they stole." Charles nodded gravely. "Then we'll need to show it to the world. But first we must protect you." "I'm done hiding," Clara said. "If they want a war, they've got at one." Charles' gaze sharpened. "Then prepare yourself. The moment you release this file, every wolf in this city will come for your throat." Outside, thunder cracked across the skyline as if the heavens themselves knew the storm Clara was about to unleash. The boardroom at Reed Technologies gleamed like a temple of power, 40 feet of polished oak, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Chicago skyline, and a dozen faces staring at Clara with varying degrees of contempt. She had walked in without an appointment, flanked by Charles and Noah, clutching the small black flash drive that held Sam's final truth. Every step toward that long table felt like crossing a minefield. Veronica Hale sat at the head, immaculate as always, her red nails tapping lazily against a crystal glass of water. "Well," she purred, "look who decided to make a dramatic entrance. I was beginning to think you'd vanished with your charity stunt." Clara didn't sit. "I'm here to finish what Sam Reed started," she said evenly. "And to expose what you did to him." The room stirred. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. A few smirked, but others looked wary. Veronica leaned back, smiling. "Expose me? Oh, sweetheart, you're out of your depth. You have no idea how this world works." "Maybe not," Clara replied, "but I know what betrayal looks like." She set the flash drive on the table. "This holds the original Eden Initiative file, along with encrypted correspondence between you and Mark Voss, messages where you discussed destroying Sam's project and forcing him off the board." A hush fell over the room. For the first time, Veronica's confidence faltered, a flicker of panic flashing across her face before she masked it. "You're bluffing," she said coldly. Noah connected his laptop to the conference screen. With one click, the room filled with Sam's voice. "If you're seeing this, it means they finally did it. They buried the Eden Initiative, but they won't bury the truth." Gasps rippled through the room. The video showed Sam sitting in his office 5 years earlier, tired but defiant. His eyes, those same kind eyes, Clara remembered, were clear and steady. "Veronica Hale and Mark Voss have turned this company into something I no longer recognize. They've traded humanity for profit. I won't fight them in court, I'll leave. But someday, someone better will finish what I started. Someone who remembers that this company was built to help, not exploit." The recording ended. Silence hung heavy. Clara stepped forward. "That someone is me." Veronica shot to her feet. "This is nonsense! Fabricated!" "That footage could be edited by anyone. Really?" Clara countered. "Then maybe the SEC will decide, or the press. Because if I don't get your full cooperation, this file goes public in 1 hour." The color drained from Veronica's face. The board members began murmuring, some leaning away from her, as if distance could erase guilt. One of them, a gray-haired man near the end of the table, cleared his throat. "Miss Hale, is there truth to this? Did you authorize the shutdown?" Veronica glared at him, her mask cracking. "I did what was necessary to protect our profits," she snapped. "Samuel Reed was weak. He would have bankrupted us, chasing some ridiculous charity dream." The words echoed like gunfire. Even those who had defended her fell silent. Clara's voice was low but steady. That ridiculous dream would have saved lives. You destroyed it for greed. Veronica's jaw clenched. "You think this changes anything? You're a waitress, Clara. You'll never survive in this world." Clara smiled faintly. "You're right. I'm not from your world. That's why I can't be bought." Noah unplugged the drive and slipped it into his pocket. "The file's already backed up," he said quietly. "You can't stop it." Veronica's eyes blazed with fury. "You'll regret this. Both of you." Clara turned to the board. "The decision's yours. You can keep following corruption, or you can follow the man who built this company on decency." The older board member nodded slowly. Motion to remove Veronica Hale as acting CEO. The room erupted. Veronica shouted, but the vote moved swiftly. 10-2. Her reign was over. Clara exhaled, her knees weak but her spirit unbroken. For the first time, the company Sam had built began to breathe again. But outside that glass tower, a sleek black car waited. And inside, Mark Voss watched the vote live, his expression dark as the storm gathering over the city. The next morning, chaos erupted across every news outlet in the country. Veronica Hale, removed from Reed Technologies after corruption scandal, blared the headlines. The video of Sam's confession had gone viral overnight, shared millions of times. Television anchors debated Clara's courage, calling her the waitress who took down the billionaires. The company's stock plummeted within hours, and the board scrambled to stabilize the empire Sam had once built. But for Clara, victory felt hollow. She stood by the window of Sam's study, watching rain slide down the glass like liquid sorrow. The city below was buzzing with her name, but she didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a survivor, standing on a battlefield littered with smoke. Charles entered quietly, carrying a folded newspaper. "It's official," he said. "The board has appointed you interim CEO until a permanent replacement is chosen." Clara turned, stunned. "Me? I'm not, Charles. I'm not qualified." He smiled gently. Neither was Mr. Reed when he started. Qualification isn't the same as conviction. You have what he had, the heart for it. Before she could answer, Noah burst into the room, laptop under his arm. "We've got a problem," he said breathlessly. Veronica wasn't working alone. Clara's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He set the laptop on the desk. On the screen was a series of encrypted financial transfers, millions of dollars funneled from Reed Technologies into a shell corporation. Mark Voss has been moving assets offshore for months. He's preparing to take control once the dust settles. If he does, everything Sam left will be gone. Charles frowned. "Can we stop him?" "Not legally," Noah replied. "He's too well connected. But if we can trace where the money's going, maybe we can expose him like we did Veronica." Clara looked at the screen, anger burning through her exhaustion. "Then we'll do it. Sam didn't die for this company to rot in the hands of thieves." For the next 2 days, they worked tirelessly sleepless nights, filled with coffee, code, and determination. Every lead pointed to the same destination. Voss International Holdings, a private equity firm run entirely by Mark Voss himself. On paper, it looked legitimate. But buried beneath layers of shell accounts and dummy investors was a single, damning truth: he'd been selling off Reed's intellectual property for personal gain. When Clara saw the final transaction, her heart stopped. "He's transferring the Eden patents," she whispered, "the ones Sam designed." That's tomorrow morning, Noah said grimly. Once he signs, the rights will be gone forever. Then we stop him tomorrow morning. Charles gave her a long, measured look. That means walking into the lion's den. Then he'll bring the fire, she said simply. The following morning, the marble lobby of Voss International gleamed like a stage set for arrogance. Mark Voss stood near the elevator, speaking to a cluster of investors. His suit was sharp, his smile sharper. When he saw Clara approaching, his grin widened. Well, if it isn't Reed's little charity case, he sneered. Here to thank me for cleaning up your mess? Clara met his gaze without flinching. No, I'm here to stop a criminal. He laughed, a sound without humor. Big words from someone who barely knows how the system works. She stepped closer, holding out her phone. Maybe not, but I know how the internet works, and I know how fast a leaked recording spreads. She hit play. On the screen, Voss' own voice echoed back at him. Sell the patents, dump the stock, and let the girl take the fall. The investors froze. Their smiles vanished. Voss' face went pale. How did you... You forgot Sam Reed built this company on innovation, Clara said coldly. And innovation leaves traces. Security entered moments later. Within minutes, Voss was escorted out, shouting threats that faded into nothing. As the doors closed behind him, Clara turned to Noah and Charles. Her knees were weak, but her resolve was iron. It's over, she whispered. Charles smiled faintly. No, Miss Miller. It's just beginning. Because outside, a figure watched from across the street, a man with familiar eyes, holding a file marked Michael Reed. The man waited until the street cleared before stepping from the shadows. The collar of his trench coat was turned up against the drizzle, his dark hair damp, his expression unreadable. He watched Clara through the glass doors of Voss International, studying her as if she were a living mystery. When she finally walked out, flanked by Charles and Noah, his eyes followed her every move. He murmured under his breath, "So you're the one Father trusted." 2 hours later, as Clara returned to the mansion, the same man stood at the gate, holding an envelope. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low, heavy with tension. Charles stepped forward first, ever the guardian. "Sir, the estate is private property. You'll need to leave." The man offered a faint smile. "Then tell Miss Miller that Michael Reed is here to see her." Charles froze. Michael Reed? Clara, who had just stepped out of the car, heard the name and stopped dead. Her pulse spiked. Sam had a son? Charles hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes. But we believed he wanted nothing to do with his father's affairs." Michael met Clara's gaze across the wet driveway. His resemblance to Sam was uncanny, the same blue-gray eyes, the same quiet intensity, but there was something harder about him, something honed by years of bitterness. Inside the study, he stood by the fireplace, refusing to sit. "I heard about what you did," he said, "taking down Hale and Voss. Quite the performance for a waitress." Clara folded her arms. "It wasn't a performance. It was justice." He gave a humorless laugh. "Justice? You think you know anything about my father's version of justice? The man who built an empire, then walked away and left his family in ruins." Charles started to speak, but Clara raised a hand. "You're angry," she said softly. "You have every right to be. But he wasn't the man you think he was." Michael's eyes flashed. "No? Then what was he, a saint in rags? A billionaire, pretending to be poor?" Clara stepped closer, holding his gaze. He was a man who lost everything because the people he trusted betrayed him, and instead of fighting back with greed, he chose to start over with humility. He didn't want revenge, he wanted redemption. For the first time, Michael's expression faltered. He looked down, his voice lower. "He could have called me." "He didn't." "He thought you hated him," she said. "He thought you'd moved on." Michael let out a slow, shaky breath. I tried. But everywhere I went, I saw his name on buildings, on screens, on people's lips. It's hard to move on when your father's ghost owns half the skyline. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Clara said, "He didn't just leave you money, Michael. He left you a choice. The same one he gave me, what to do with what's left of Reed Technologies." He studied her for a long moment, then asked, "Why you? Why would he trust a stranger with everything?" "Because I fed him when no one else would," she replied simply. "Because I saw him when the world didn't." Michael looked at her then not as an opponent, but as someone who had known a version of his father he never would. "And what are you planning to do now?" "Finish the Eden Initiative," she said. "The real way. No shareholders, no corruption. Just clean water for those who need it." Something softened in his eyes, a flicker of emotion he tried to hide. "You sound like him. Then maybe that's not such a bad thing." He gave a slow nod. "You'll need resources, connections, people who still believe in what he stood for. I can help with that." Clara hesitated. "Why would you help me?" He looked toward the portrait of Sam hanging above the fireplace. "Because I spent 5 years hating a man I never understood. Maybe helping you is how I finally make peace with him." Clara extended her hand. "Then let's rebuild his dream together." Michael took it, his grip firm. "Together, Miss Miller. But understand this once we start. There's no turning back." Outside the mansion gates, a black drone hovered in the mist, its red light blinking as it streamed their handshake to someone watching miles away. The next morning dawned grey and cold, the kind of morning that carried both promise and warning. Clara stood on the terrace overlooking the lake, her coffee cooling in her hand. Inside the mansion, Michael and Noah were arguing in low, tense voices about how to relaunch the Eden Initiative without triggering another attack from what remained of the old board. "It's not just business, Noah," Michael said sharply. "If we move too fast, they'll bury us in lawsuits before we even start." Noah shot back. "If we move too slow, the patents disappear into another corporate shell. That's what Voss wanted to stall until people stop caring." Clara stepped inside, her calm presence cutting through the tension. "Then we don't move fast or slow," she said. "We move smart." Both men turned toward her. For the first time, Michael's hardened expression softened. He saw in her the same steady confidence his father once had, the quiet conviction that came from knowing what was right. "What's your plan?" he asked. "We relaunch Eden from the ground up," she said. "Not as a corporate project, but as a foundation. We use Sam's name, his story, his vision. People believed in him once, they'll believe again, and we'll make sure they see what this company tried to destroy." Noah frowned. "That's going to draw every vulture in the industry. The media, the investors, the politicians, they'll all want a piece." "Good," Clara replied. "Let them watch. This time, we won't hide." Michael crossed his arms, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. "You're fearless. Or foolish." "Maybe both," she said. By noon, the three of them were sitting in Sam's old office at Reed Technologies, surrounded by boxes of recovered files. The building felt different now lighter, though shadows of distrust still lingered in every corner. The security team had been replaced, the remaining executives summoned for a full audit. For the first time in years, the name Reed carried integrity again. As Clara went through the stacks of paper, she found an old folder labeled Prototypes Eden Beta. Inside were handwritten notes from Sam, full of his messy, hopeful sketches. At the bottom, a message scrawled in fading ink read, "If you're reading this, it means you still believe people are worth saving." She smiled faintly. "I still do, Sam," she whispered. The next few days were a blur of planning and rebuilding. Reporters camped outside the building, clamoring for interviews. Clara refused most requests, but one morning she stepped in front of the cameras and spoke directly to the world. Samuel Reed believed that innovation should serve humanity, not the other way around, she said. The Eden Initiative is not about profit, it's about purpose. We're bringing it back, and this time, no one can take it away. Her words spread like wildfire. Donations poured in. Engineers and scientists who had once left Reed Technologies asked to return. Volunteers reached out from across the country, offering to test prototypes in communities that needed clean water. Still, not everyone celebrated. Anonymous emails arrived late at night, threats, warnings, veiled promises of ruin. One simply read, "You can't fight the system that feeds you." Noah traced the source of the messages to an offshore server. "Voss people," he muttered. "He may be gone, but his allies aren't." Michael's jaw tightened. "Then we'll hit them where it hurts, their reputation." Clara nodded. "We'll expose every contract, every bribe, every false claim." Sam's story won't end in silence. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Clara and Michael stood in the quiet lobby. The golden light from the chandelier shimmered across the marble floors. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "why my father trusted you instead of me?" She looked at him, her eyes warm but steady. "Maybe he knew you'd find your way back when it mattered most." Michael studied her for a long moment, then smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Then let's make sure his faith wasn't wasted." Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the mezzanine above a former board member whispering into his phone, "They're relaunching Eden. Tell the investors it's time to strike back." The following week, Reed Technologies became a war zone, polished on the surface, chaotic beneath. News of the Eden relaunch had spread faster than wildfire, igniting both hope and fury. Stockholders panicked, politicians called emergency meetings, and rival corporations whispered of interference. But behind all the noise, darker forces were gathering, those who had thrived on corruption, and saw Sam's vision as a threat to their empire. Clara could feel the tension pulsing through the building. She had learned to walk with purpose, her heels clicking across marble floors as if defiance itself kept her balanced. Still, every glance from an employee, every whispered conversation behind glass walls, reminded her loyalty was fragile. That afternoon, she entered the boardroom to find Noah pacing and Michael standing stiffly by the window, phone in hand. "What happened?" she asked. Michael turned, his voice sharp. "A leak. Someone inside transferred our prototype specs to an offshore server 2 hours ago." Clara froze. "The Eden prototypes? How?" Noah ran a hand through his hair. "Only 4 people had clearance, you, me, Michael, and one of the new engineers. But whoever did this covered their tracks too well. We're locked out of half our systems." Charles, who had been silent until then, spoke quietly from the corner. "Miss Miller, there's something else. Reporters are already outside with questions about a financial scandal. Someone planted documents claiming the foundation funds were misused." Clara blinked, stunned. "That's impossible. We just started." Michael's jaw tightened. "It's a setup. They're trying to bury Eden before it launches." Her mind raced. This was exactly how they destroyed Samby, twisting truth into poison. "Then we fight the same way he did," she said firmly, "with proof." But before they could act, the doors swung open. Veronica Hale walked in, flanked by 2 attorneys. Her presence was like a storm that refused to die. "Miss me?" she said with that familiar, poisonous smile. Clara's heart skipped. "You're trespassing, Veronica. Security should have stopped you." "They tried," Veronica said smoothly, "but it turns out I'm still a shareholder. And as of this morning, I've been reinstated as an advisor by order of the court." She tossed a folder onto the table. "You didn't think I'd go quietly, did you?" Michael stepped forward. "You're finished, Hale. You have no authority here." "Oh, I have plenty," she purred. "And soon the public will know your precious Eden is just another PR scam. The files you're looking for, Already in the hands of the media. Noah slammed his fist on the table. You stole from us again. Veronica's smirk widened. Please, you make it sound personal. It is personal, Clara said, stepping closer. You destroyed Sam's life. You turned his dream into your weapon. Veronica's eyes flashed with disdain. Don't romanticize him. Sam Reed was a fool. He thought compassion could fix the world. You think you're any different? You're just another woman chasing a fairy tale. Clara's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. Maybe I am. But fairy tales give people hope, and hope terrifies people like you. Veronica's expression hardened. You'll regret this. Before Clara could respond, security entered the room. Cameras flashed from the hallway, reporters pushing forward, shouting questions. Someone had tipped them off. Chaos erupted. Michael grabbed Clara's arm. We need to go, now! They escaped through the back exit, escorted by Charles. Outside, the sound of helicopters thudded above the city. Chicago's skyline glowed in chaos, half of it watching, half of it judging. In the car, Clara sat silently as the world outside blurred by. They're going to destroy everything, aren't they? She whispered. Michael looked at her. Only if we let them. We still have the original drives, Sam encrypted. If we can find where he hid the master key, we can expose the whole network. Clara turned toward him, her fear hardening into resolve. Then we find it whatever it takes. Noah checked his laptop, frowning. If I'm reading this right, the master key's location was last accessed 5 years ago. The signal came from one place, Sam's old cabin by the lake. Michael met Clara's gaze and said quietly, Then that's where we'll finish this. But none of them noticed the tiny tracking device blinking beneath their car's bumper. The drive to Sam's old cabin took them far from the city lights, past endless stretches of forest and narrow winding roads where fog rolled in thick waves. It was nearly midnight when the car's headlights finally cut through the trees to reveal a small wooden cabin perched beside a still, dark lake. The air smelled of pine and rain. Everything was silent except for the distant call of a loon and the crunch of gravel under their tires. Charles parked the car. We're here, he said quietly. Clara stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. The cabin looked forgotten, but not neglected. The porch light was still there, its glass cracked but intact. She ran her fingers along the railing, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. He must have come here when he disappeared, she whispered. Michael nodded, his gaze distant. My father used to bring me here when I was little. We'd fish on this lake every summer. I didn't think I'd ever see it again. Noah was already setting up his laptop on the porch table. If the master key exists, this is where he'd hide it. Sam was old school. No clouds, no servers. He liked things he could touch. Clara entered the cabin first. Dust floated in the beam of her flashlight. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. On one wall hung a framed photo of Sam standing beside the lake, smiling. He looked younger. 3 years before, the weight of betrayal bent his shoulders. She whispered, You knew this place would bring us back to you. Didn't you, Sam? Noah crouched near a wooden chest by the fireplace. Found something. He pried it open, revealing stacks of yellowed papers, blueprints, and an old leather journal. Inside, the handwriting was unmistakably Sam's. Michael leaned over his shoulder. It's the Eden schematics. Clara's heart leapt. Does it mention the master key? Noah flipped through the pages until he found a line scrawled across the margin. Truth buried under reflection. He frowned. Reflection. That could mean the lake. They stepped outside again, flashlights cutting through the fog. The lake stretched before them, black as glass. Clara felt the weight of the silence settle deep in her bones. If it's out there, she said, how do we find it? Michael pointed toward a small wooden dock. He used to hide things beneath the floorboards. Maybe he left something for us. Together, they pried open the loose plank near the edge. Underneath was a small waterproof case, rusted but sealed tight. Clara's hands shook as she pulled it free. Inside was a single hard drive, wrapped in plastic, and a note written in Sam's familiar looping script. If you've come this far, you've earned the truth. This drive holds everything, the corruption, the names, the proof they can't erase. But be warned, once you open it, you can never go back. Michael exhaled slowly. He knew this day would come. Before they could say another word, headlights flared in the distance, 2, then 4, bouncing across the dirt road. Engines roared. Noah's voice dropped. They found us. Clara clutched the drive to her chest. We have to go. Michael grabbed her arm. No, if they take it now, it's over. The first SUV skidded to a stop near the trees. Men in dark coats poured out, flashlights slicing through the fog. Veronica Hale's voice echoed from the shadows, sharp as broken glass. You should have stayed in your diner, Clara. Michael stepped in front of her. Get to the car. You'll hold them off. No, Clara said fiercely. We stay together. Noah disconnected his laptop, tossing it into her hands. The car's GPS is already set for the backup server in the city. Go, he'll cover you. The sound of gunshots shattered the still night. Clara and Michael dove for cover behind the cabin, the hard drive pressed between them like a heartbeat. Sam, she whispered under her breath, give us strength. As they sprinted toward the car, the cabin behind them erupted in flames, and through the smoke, Veronica smiled, believing the truth had burned with it. The night sky lit up behind them as the cabin went up in flames, the explosion tearing through the silence of the forest. The shockwave hit the car like a punch, rattling the windows as Clara gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands. Michael sat beside her, clutching the hard drive to his chest, while Charles shouted directions from the back seat. Smoke billowed through the trees, orange fire reflecting in the lake like a burning mirror. Go! Michael yelled. Drive! Clara slammed her foot on the gas. The tires spun on wet gravel before gripping the dirt road, sending them flying through the narrow forest trail. Branches scraped against the sides of the car, sparks flying as gunshots cracked behind them. Headlights followed, 2 SUVs, closing fast. They're gaining, Charles shouted. I know! Clara swerved sharply around a bend, the rear bumper grazing a tree trunk. She could barely see through the fog. Her pulse hammered in her ears. We can't outrun them on this road. Then we don't, Michael said, twisting in his seat. He opened the glove box, revealing a flare gun. Sam kept one here for emergencies. Clara glanced at him. That's not going to stop them. No, he said grimly, but it might slow them down. He leaned out the window, aimed, and fired. The red flare streaked through the air, bursting against the windshield of the lead SUV. The driver swerved, tires screeching, the vehicle crashing into a tree with a deafening crunch. The second car braked too late, smashing into the first. Fire erupted behind them once more. Clara didn't slow down until they hit the main road, their car bouncing over potholes. The forest disappeared in the rearview mirror, replaced by a long stretch of highway, illuminated by the weak glow of dawn. Noah's voice came through the speaker from a secure line. I'm tracking your signal. You've got 10 minutes before the next set of interceptors finds you. Where are you? Michael asked. Heading to the backup server in the city, Noah replied. Once you get here, we upload everything Sam collected. Every file, every transaction. The world will know. Clara nodded, her jaw set. We're on our way. By the time they reached the outskirts of Chicago, the sun was rising over the skyline, painting the clouds in bruised shades of pink and grey. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. Clara felt that same tight pull in her chest she always felt before something broke. They pulled into an old industrial building near the River Noah's hidden tech lab. He was already there, typing furiously at a row of monitors. Give me the drive, he said, not looking up. Michael handed it over. Please tell me you can get it online before they track us again. Noah smirked faintly. Watch me. The room buzzed with tension as code streamed across the screens. Clara stood beside him, heart pounding. Every sound, the hum of the computers, the rain against the windows, even her own breathing seemed louder than it should have been. Then Noah froze. Wait. Something's wrong. There's a firewall embedded inside the drive. It's not just data protection. It's a test. A test? Clara asked. He turned to her. Sam set a final verification code. Only one person can unlock it, you. Clara blinked. Me? Voice recognition, Noah explained. He must have recorded your voice back at the diner. He programmed it so only you could authorize the upload. Her throat tightened. He trusted me that much? Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. He believed in you, Clara. Now prove him right. She stepped closer to the microphone, the firelight from the screens reflecting in her eyes. Upload file, Eden, she said clearly. The system paused. Then Sam's recorded voice echoed faintly. Clara Miller, permission granted. The monitors exploded in light as terabytes of encrypted data began streaming to global servers. Headlines, documents, and videos appeared on screens across the world. Every secret, every crime, every betrayal exposed in real time. Noah laughed breathlessly. It's live. The world's seeing everything. Michael exhaled, his shoulders dropping in relief. Clara smiled faintly, tears glimmering in her eyes. You did it, Sam, she whispered. But before they could celebrate, the lights in the room flickered. Outside, the whir of helicopter blades grew louder. Michael looked up, his face pale. They're here. And as the glass shattered above them, the truth that had just saved the world now threatened to destroy them. The helicopter's roar filled the air, blades slicing through the early morning light like a vengeful storm. The glass ceiling shattered above them, raining shards across the concrete floor. Clara dropped to the ground as bullets tore through the walls, sparks flying from metal beams. The smell of smoke and gunpowder flooded the room. Down! Michael shouted, pulling her behind a steel table. Noah grabbed his laptop and yanked the cords free, sparks flashing as the screens flickered and died. They're trying to cut the signal, he yelled. Is the upload complete? Clara's voice trembled, but stayed strong. 87%, Noah replied. If they destroy the servers now, everything's gone. Charles crouched near the doorway, revolver in hand, a weapon Clara had never seen him carry. We'll hold them off as long as we can. Charles, no, she cried. We need everyone alive. He gave her a look both gentle and resolute. Mr. Reed once told me that courage isn't about living without fear, it's about living for something worth dying for. He checked the revolver's chamber and moved toward the door. The helicopter hovered closer, floodlights blinding through the broken roof. Men in tactical gear rappelled down, their faces hidden behind visors. Veronica Hale's voice crackled over a loudspeaker. Clara Miller, she called, her tone cutting through the chaos. You think you've won? That video won't save you. You just exposed national interests. You're finished. Clara stood, fury overriding fear. I exposed you, Veronica. The world finally knows who you are. Gunfire erupted. Charles fired back, buying them precious seconds. Noah hunched over his laptop, typing faster than she thought humanly possible. 92%. Almost there. Michael grabbed Clara's arm. We have to get her focus off us. How? He pulled a flare from his pocket, the same kind they used at the lake. Distraction. He lit it and hurled it toward the far corner. Red light filled the room, and the gunman turned instinctively. Smoke clouded the air. Michael and Clara ran toward the side exit, ducking under flying debris. Charles' voice echoed from behind them. Go, get the file out! They burst through the side door into the cold dawn. The city skyline stretched before them, quiet and indifferent. A black SUV screeched to a stop nearby Noah's backup plan. Get in, he shouted from the driver's seat. Uploads still running remotely. As soon as the doors slammed shut, they sped through the deserted streets. Behind them, the building burned. Clara turned to look back, her heart aching. Charles Michael squeezed her hand. He knew what he was doing. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police cruisers, news vans, and drones filled the skyline as the sun broke through the clouds. Noah's laptop beeped, and the words "Upload complete" appeared on the screen. "It's done," he whispered. "It's everywhere now, social media, global archives, independent servers. They can't erase it." Clara leaned back, tears streaming down her face. Relief hit her like a tidal wave. Then Sam's truth lives. But victory came at a price. The radio in the car crackled to life, a frantic voice breaking through static. "Breaking news, former CEO Veronica Hale under investigation for fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Federal agents en route to Reed Technologies." Michael exhaled shakily. "It's over." Noah slowed the car as they reached the edge of the city. The sunrise painted the glass towers gold. "Where to now?" he asked. Clara looked toward the horizon, her voice steady but soft. "To finish what Sam started. To build Eden 4 real this time." Michael turned to her, eyes filled with something between admiration and disbelief. "You're not going to stop, are you?" She shook her head. "Not until every person who needs clean water has it. That was Sam's promise. Now it's mine." As the car disappeared into the morning traffic, news alerts flooded the world. Every secret they had exposed played across screens in offices, homes, and cafes. The world finally knew the truth, and the name Clara Miller became a symbol of courage. But far above, another helicopter rose quietly from the smoke, and inside it, a wounded Veronica Hale watched the city fade below, whispering, "It's not over yet, Waitress. Not by a long shot." 2 weeks later, Chicago looked different. The smoke had cleared, and so had the lies. Every news station in the country ran the same headline: "Reed Technologies, whistleblower exposes corporate corruption. Eden Initiative revived." Overnight, Clara Miller went from a nameless waitress to a global name. People called her the voice of the forgotten, the woman who fed the truth. But fame was never what she wanted. All she'd ever cared about was keeping Sam's promise alive. The mansion by the lake had been rebuilt, not as a home, but as the new headquarters for the Reed Foundation. The golden letters gleamed on the front gates, a symbol of rebirth. Reporters crowded the entrance, flashes popping like fireworks. But inside the atmosphere was calm, focused. Engineers, scientists, and volunteers filled the once empty halls. The Eden prototypes had been rebuilt and improved, ready to be distributed to drought-stricken towns across the country. Clara stood in Sam's old study, now converted into a planning room. The portrait of him still hung above the fireplace, his steady gaze watching over everything. She ran her fingers along the frame and whispered, "We did it, Sam. You can rest now." Noah entered, holding a clipboard and 2 cups of coffee. "You know, for someone who started as a diner waitress, you run this place like you've been doing it all your life." Clara smiled softly. "Maybe because I spent most of my life serving people. Turns out, it wasn't such bad training." He chuckled. "You always find the light in things, don't you?" She looked out the window toward the volunteers loading the first batch of Eden devices into trucks. "Sam found light in me, when no one else did. I owe it to him to keep it burning." Michael entered next, his expression thoughtful. He'd taken on a quieter role since the chaosless anger, more purpose. "The UN just called," he said. "They want a partnership, global distribution. Eden's about to go international." Clara turned to him, her eyes widening. "That's incredible." He nodded. "They said your speech last week inspired them. No one should drink poison because the powerful want profit." "That line is everywhere." Clara laughed softly. "I was just speaking from the heart." Michael studied her a moment. "You really don't see what you've done, do you?" You didn't just honor my father's. Dream you rebuilt his name, his legacy, and maybe a part of mine, too. Her eyes softened. He'd be proud of you, Michael. He smiled faintly. You think so? I know so. Outside, children from a local school arrived for the foundation's opening ceremony. The sound of laughter filled the air. Clara watched as one boy bent down to drink from the first working Eden unit, the clear water flowing freely into his hands. His face lit up in pure joy. That, she said quietly, is what this was always about. Noah joined her at the window. Hard to believe all this started with a bowl of soup. Clara nodded, emotion swelling in her throat. Sometimes the smallest kindness changes everything. Just then, a soft chime echoed from her computer. An email notification flashed across the screen. The sender's name made her heart stop. From unknown. Subject: You can't save the world alone. Attached was a single photo shot of Veronica Hale standing in front of a news studio, alive, smiling, wearing a clean white suit. The caption read, Rehabilitation, not revenge. Hale launches new corporate initiative. Michael's expression darkened as he read over her shoulder. She's rebuilding. Clara's jaw set, but her voice stayed calm. Let her. This time, the truth will follow her everywhere she goes. Noah looked at her curiously. You're not afraid? She shook her head. No. Because Sam taught me something evil doesn't end when we expose it. It ends when we outshine it. The sun broke through the clouds then, golden light pouring across the foundation's marble floor. Outside, the trucks began to roll out, each carrying Sam's vision into the world. And as the convoy disappeared down the road, Clara whispered, This is for you, Sam. Never noticing the black car parked on the hill, where Veronica watched with cold eyes and whispered, And this time, it's my turn. A year passed. The world had changed more than anyone thought possible. The Eden Initiative was no longer a dream whispered in secret, it was a movement. From drought-ridden villages in Africa to storm-ravaged towns in the Midwest, clean water flowed again, all stamped with the small silver emblem of the Reed Foundation. Every headline called Clara Miller a hero. But when people asked her what she'd done to change the world, she always said the same thing. I just fed a man who was hungry. On a cool spring morning, Clara sat at her favorite booth inside the newly restored Sunrise Diner. The same neon sign still flickered outside, and the air still smelled like coffee and hope. The walls were repainted, but the soul of the place hadn't changed. This was where it had all begun, where a tired waitress and a homeless man had unknowingly altered the course of countless lives. The door chimed, and a rush of fresh air swept in. Leo, now taller and healthier than ever, ran toward her, his school backpack bouncing against his shoulder. Mom! The teacher showed your foundation video in class today. Clara smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind his ear. Yeah? What did you think? He grinned. You looked like a superhero. She laughed softly. Superheroes wear capes, sweetheart. I just wear an apron. The waitress on duty, a young woman with tired eyes, approached the table. Miss Miller, she said shyly, your meal's on the house today. The owner wanted to thank you for what you did for this city. Clara blinked, humbled. You don't have to. But the girl cut her off. Please. You gave us all something to believe in again. Clara nodded, her voice gentle. Then promise me something, keep believing in people, even when they don't believe in themselves. The girl smiled. I will. As she walked away, Clara glanced out the window. A sleek Rolls-Royce glided to a stop in front of the diner, the same black car that had once changed her life. This time, there was no fear in her heart, only peace. The door opened, and Michael Reed stepped in, wearing a crisp grey suit. He carried a bouquet of white lilies. You still sit by the window, he said, smiling softly. Old habits, Clara replied. You still drive that car? He chuckled. Some things deserve to be preserved. They sat together, the quiet between them comfortable. The foundation's reaching its 500th site today, he said proudly. Dad would have been over the moon. Clara's gaze softened. He's already there, Michael. I think he's been watching this whole time. He looked down, his voice lower. I never told you this, but before he disappeared, he left me a letter too. He said, Find the woman who reminds you what it means to be human. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. Clara smiled through the lump in her throat. He didn't mean me. He meant kindness, compassion. We just happened to cross paths at the right time. For a long moment, they sat in silence, both staring out at the busy street people hurrying to work, children laughing, the rhythm of life moving forward. Then Clara's eyes caught a figure across the street, a frail man in a torn coat, sitting quietly on a bench, holding a cardboard sign that read, Hungry but hopeful. Without a word, she stood, picked up her plate of pancakes, and carried it outside. The man looked up as she placed it in front of him. Eat, she said kindly. It's warm. His eyes glistened. Thank you, Mom. You're too kind. She smiled. Someone once showed me kindness when I needed it most, just paying it forward. As she turned to leave, he whispered, God bless you. Clara looked back once more. The morning sunlight spilled across the diner's window, reflecting the faint outline of Sam's face in the glass, smiling, proud, eternal. She whispered, Thank you, Sam, for everything. And as the Rolls-Royce rolled away into the sunrise, the world kept spinning one act of kindness at a time, forever reminding us that compassion never dies. So that's how the story ends, and if you're still here with me right now, my friend, it means something in this story, touched your heart in a way words can't fully explain. Maybe it's the reminder that kindness, no matter how small, can change everything. Clara's journey teaches us that compassion is never wasted, even when the world turns cold. As the Stoics once said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Sam found peace not in wealth, but in humility. Clara found strength not in power, but in empathy. And maybe that's what we're all searching for, a little bit of peace, a little bit of purpose in a noisy world. Remember, healing often begins with one act of goodness toward others and toward ourselves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. So let's be that good person today, the one who smiles first, forgives faster, and believes in the power of love to rebuild what's broken. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe, because somewhere out there, someone else might need this reminder too. You and I, we can keep kindness alive, one story at a time.